Okay, hello everybody. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. And today is June 26th. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, for today, don't really have a unifying theme per se today. I think we're just gonna be talking about some stuff that happened in the news, but I do want to focus a little bit on the conservative reaction to Juneteenth being a federal holiday, and then also critical race theory, which really seems to be making a lot of the conservative Chud people lose their minds. So, Dinah Cat, how you doing? Thanks for joining. Maddo virtually predicted terrorist incidents this weekend. I think she needs a break from digging in the rabbit holes. I didn't see that. I'll have to check that out. But I wouldn't doubt it, though. I really wouldn't doubt that if we see some kind of, political, sectarian type violence happening, if not this weekend, then sometime soon, I think that the country is kind of hitting one of those boiling point sort of moments, where, it of course it has been way worse in the past, obviously. But there's a lot of very scared and highly misinformed people out there right now that are also highly armed. Lots of, people that are very scared, very misinformed, and, also have access to extremely dangerous weapons. And they've shown in the past that, they're also not the brightest tools in the sharpest tools in the shed. And they've shown in the past that, they don't really think very much when it comes to enacting violence for political reasons. So yeah, I mean, I hope she's wrong. I hope there isn't any violence at all, and I hope these people channel their aggression towards the system in a meaningful way, But I don't have a lot of confidence. Let's just put it that way. I really do think, yeah, there may be, I don't think there's going to be organized terrorist attacks, though. I think we might get things like mass shootings, shit like that. You know what I mean? I don't think there's an organized terrorist resistance on the far right, that isn't related to, a race type thing. There's plenty of racist groups, things like the Oath Keepers, and, plenty of racist groups, plenty of, sort of pseudo militia type groups like the Oath Keepers. And then there's also people like Proud Boys, stuff like that. But those guys are too high profile. You know what I mean? I really don't think, for example, that the Proud Boys are gonna go out and try to hijack a federal building or something like that. Or the Oath Keepers are gonna go and take hostages, or try to shoot a politician. Not now, maybe at some point in the future. They're too high profile. If this is going to happen, it's going to come from a small group of kind of like those guys who wanted to take over the those guys who wanted to kidnap the governor of Michigan. If you remember, they were sort of tangentially related to Boogaloo Boys or whatever. And then one of them was in the Oath Keepers or something like that, but they weren't affiliated with those groups officially. It was just sort of five guys who started their own little terror cell. I think you might see stuff like that. You know what I mean? But not on a national scale. Anyway, but thanks for thanks for the heads up there. I'll have to watch that one. So I do have some stuff that I want to talk about. Let me just open up my notes here, and still trying to get. What I need is a third monitor because I only have two monitors. So I've got one for the stream, one for the artwork here, And then, need another monitor to have my notes on. But so today, let's see. Lots of crazy stuff happening. Let's talk a little bit about some news for a little bit before we move on to the main event. Let's see. First thing that happened in the news. Derek Chauvin gets 22 and a half years for the murder of George Floyd. Just in time for Juneteenth, huh? I think this really is probably the best outcome that we could possibly get for the George Floyd thing. You know what I mean? And think about that. Think about, because, there's been a lot of pushback from, people in right-wing circles and even some left, people on the left, the moderate left, stuff like that, when it came to the George Floyd protests, because it is true that there was a lot of riots that started, things like that, looting, etc. Even though the vast majority of those protests were peaceful, and it was something like, 97% of all those protests were peaceful or whatever, 97% of them went down without a hitch, whatever, But the thing about that is that, well, look at the results. It's like, do you guys think that this conviction wouldn't have happened without the public outcry? Without the repeated marching in the streets and protests and everything that over the last year? Probably not. There probably never even would have been a trial if there wasn't a movement, So I've kind of said in the past that I don't really think protest does very much. And I still kind of stand by that, because this ultimately is not going to do much to change the law or change policy, right? In the long run. Not really. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Right. I don't think that these protests are actually going to solve the problem. Obviously not. It may temporarily get police departments around the country to re-examine how they police certain, I guess, practices that they use. It may cause them to be like, okay, well, maybe just to be a little more strict when it comes to beating the crap out of people and shooting them, as a matter of routine. You know what I mean? So yeah, maybe it will have a positive effect on people's lives. Maybe it'll actually save some lives, So I guess I kind of take it back a little bit, when I said in the past multiple times that protesting doesn't do anything. Well, it looks like in this case it actually did. It actually got some justice for George Floyd's family, and might get some police departments in the at least in the foreseeable future to scale it back a little bit, to kind of try to put the reins on their institutional racism. So there you go. I guess we can have nice things once in a while, right? So that's a good thing. Let's see, what else do we have in the news here? Wanted to mention that briefly. Let's see. My phone keeps closing down on me here. Okay. Another big thing that happened, to the surprise of no one, is the For the People Act was blocked. Big surprise there. We all kind of knew that was coming. For the People Act, if, for those of you who need a reminder, was the Democrats' voting bill that would basically fight back against all of these voter suppression bills that we're seeing in red states in the wake of the 2020 election. So kind of spent a lot of time on this in prior streams, so I don't want to recap, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just a quick recap. Basically, since 2020, and since the Republicans lost 2020, instead of trying to assess why people aren't voting for them, They're instead they've decided to suppress the vote, and we've seen lots of pretty egregious voter suppression bills get passed in basically red states. You know, I did a whole stream on this. They match up pretty close to the old Confederacy, actually. So, but you know, the most egregious of those the one that's gotten the most press has been Georgia. You know, that's the state where, you know, you're not allowed to give someone a glass of water while they're waiting in line for 12 hours. Right. That's the pretty bad one. Which, by the way, some more news on that. That law is being currently sued by the Department of Justice. So here's hoping that one might actually get overturned as well. But anyway, yeah. So the For the People Act would basically push back against all that stuff, right? And it would you know, do a lot to basically just outlaw, you know, a lot of these, you know, suppression tactics. And pretty much, you know, it didn't even get to a vote. And we all could have, like, predicted that this was going to happen. You know, this is when I say to the surprise of no one, it's like, you know, seriously, no one is surprised. We all knew that there was no way in hell any Republicans at all were going to vote for this, because their entire model is based on, you know, preventing people from voting. So what interest do they have? Because this was the whole thing, right? There's been pressure put on Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema to get rid of the filibuster, and they don't want to do it for whatever fucking reason, right? You know, who knows what their actual, like, real reason is that they're not doing it, whether it's because, you know, donors are giving them money not to do it, or whether they really honestly truly believe that, you know, it's wrong to do it. I mean, because that could be a legit motive too. You know, if you remove it, then eventually Republicans will be in charge of the Senate, and if they don't have the filibuster rules, we won't be able to stop them. You know, that's actually a legit concern. Right, but is it the real reason that they're not, like, allowing it, or is that a bullshit excuse? Who knows? I mean, whatever. But for whatever reason, they just won't get rid of the filibuster. And there was actually some other stories in the news about how Joe Manchin got caught on a call talking with donors about how he was pressuring Republican donors to pressure some Republicans to basically sign on board with him, is what he was doing. So that was kind of a mini scandal last week. A lot of people on the left were pissed at that, because a lot of people on the left don't understand the reality of our political system. And, you know, unfortunately, nothing Joe Manchin did there was illegal. It's just that's how the system works. You talk to donors. All he was really doing was saying, hey, you donors that give us money, talk to these Republicans and tell them to, like, sign on with my fucking shit. That's all he was basically doing. He was wheeling and dealing. There's nothing illegal about that. I mean, it's slimy. And, you know, if we didn't have a filibuster, he wouldn't have to do shit like that. But of course, you know, our system is fucked up, and the people who really run the show are the people who control the purse strings, obviously. And that's the same whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you know, unless you're like Bernie Sanders or something. Unless you're like somebody who actually has integrity and only takes, you know, money from small donors like Bernie Sanders or AOC or something like that. Anyway, you notice that there aren't that many people on the Republican side that do the same thing. I wonder why. So, anyway, yeah, getting back to this, that got blocked, so don't expect any changes to, you know, any help to undo this voter suppression stuff coming from the federal government, because it's not coming, unfortunately, to the surprise of nobody. So that's kind of fucked up. All 50 Republicans voted against this, by the way. Every single one of them. The same way that all 50 Republicans voted against COVID stimulus. right? The same way that all 50 Republicans are going to vote against everything that, the Biden administration puts out. I just saw a thing in the news how Joe Biden says we have a deal when it comes to infrastructure, and I am really sorry to inform him that he's living in fantasy land, and when it actually comes time to vote for this infrastructure, I predict that all 50 Republicans will vote against that as well. That's just, I'm willing to put money down on that it's going to be a 50 to 50 vote when it comes to the infrastructure bill. They're lying. But anyway. Lewis the Hedgehog, what's going on, man? Thanks for joining. Anyhow, so yeah, just wanted to start off with a couple of things in news there, some stories that happened this week. It's a fucked up world. Everybody's insane. Let's see here. Let's take a look at how we're doing with this. It's looking pretty good. I still think I need to draw something to fill this little side. Maybe I'll draw like a little skeleton dude. Oh, wait. Yeah, we have to put a tentacle here. Okay, we can do that. Let's put a tentacle there, because that's sort of like, he's like not touching the ground. See, he's like floating. So let's just draw another little thing here. What else do we want to talk about? Okay, Donald Trump is back in the news again, of course. It's almost like he never left it. I was kind of hoping that after Donald Trump lost the election and finally fucked off back to Florida or wherever the fuck he was going, that we could stop talking about his ass. But nope. He is still managing to keep himself relevant in the news, if just for the fact about how bad of a person and bad of a president he was. So a lot of these revelations are coming out of a book that is being published called a book about by Michael Bender, who was a reporter, and apparently had some access to the inside of the Trump White House. So a couple of things that are coming out in this book here. Apparently, first big thing that should get every single person in the world to hate Donald Trump is that he inquired about keeping COVID victims like isolated in Guantanamo Bay. Apparently that's real shit, and the quote was something like, "Don't we own an island, Guantanamo Bay, where we could put these people?" Something like that, I'm paraphrasing. That's kind of disgusting, and the thing about that is that it's completely believable, isn't it? Because the response you're going to get from Republicans and conservatives and Trump people and, whatever, they're going to say, oh, this is all fake news, blah, 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 none of this is real, they're making it up, etc. Well, tell me, listen to how that sounds, and tell me if you think Donald Trump would actually say that. We should put COVID people in Guantanamo Bay. That sounds exactly like something he would say, doesn't it? You guys remember when the COVID thing first started, and there were like 40 people that were on a cruise ship who had it, and Donald Trump didn't want to let them back into the country, even though they're Americans, and there's nothing he could do to stop them from coming in. Apparently, he really did try to stop these people from coming into the country. And he thought that, because the reason why he wanted them to not come into the country is because it would double the number of people in the country who were, confirmed to be suffering from the Rona at that time. Right? So, yeah. I mean, it's not like this guy hasn't done this before or said very insensitive things like this in the past. So I chalk this one. I actually believe this one. I believe that he actually did, at least say this, if not actually try to enact it. I mean, let's see what else we got. Also, he wanted to punish Saturday Night Live he inquired about the Justice Department and his own personal lawyers to see if there was any way that he could use them to punish Saturday Night Live. I completely believe that as well. 100%, that sounds extremely plausible. I mean, seriously, because that's how he kind of has a pattern of, this sort of narcissistic kind of like, he has like this sort of pattern of like arrogant, narcissistic, like, what's the word I'm looking for here? You know what I mean? Like he definitely can't handle it when people criticize him, right? Adversary Fandin, how you doing? Thanks for joining, man. Like if you remember back in 2016, right? There's that roast that both Hillary Clinton and Trump went to, and it's like a tradition for the press corps where you go and you basically crack jokes and stuff and like, kind of tease yourself, right? I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a tradition that all presidents and stuff go to in order to, and then the press makes fun of them in a healthy way, right? The press corps correspondence dinner or something like that, right? And in 2016, Donald Trump went to it with Hillary Clinton and basically couldn't handle it. And he refused to criticize, and Hillary Clinton would crack jokes about herself, and it was funny. People were laughing. Then Trump would get up and he would, like, just start calling her a thief and shit like that. And everybody was booing at him, And it was like, it's because the guy can't take any criticism. He can't even like joke about himself, It's a healthy sign of a good, healthy ego where you can basically, take a ribbing and not lose your fucking mind over it. There's, it's everybody should be able to poke fun at themselves, and to some degree, without, turning into a giant fucking baby. All right, so this dude is just extremely tall. You see, his leg goes all the way down here now. He's just very, very tall. In fact, you know what? There needs to be a foot behind this, because it's like he has 1 foot. See, it should be like right here. So he just has very, very long legs. So let's put a foot back here. Yeah, he couldn't do it. He like refused to like, play along, and everybody was booing him and shit. And I think that was just a prime example of like, yeah, the dude's ego is like fragile. And it makes perfect sense to me that he would like use his like official power as, the president in order to like, try to stop Saturday Night Live from fucking making fun of him. It basically fits with the MO, put it that way. Let's see. And then one more thing about Trump, because I am sick of tired of talking about Donald Trump, and I kind of never want to ever again. But I thought this one was important. Apparently he wanted to up the violence against BLM protesters, including shooting them. So this is actually also from that book. So apparently he would go around and he would find videos on the internet and on TV and stuff of police beating up protesters, and he would share those with, his top military and law enforcement officials, Bill Barr, shit like that, Attorney General. He would like share videos of people getting like tear gassed, cops beating them, stuff like that, and would be like, this is what we got to do, right? We need to come down harder. And he apparently the quote was, "This is how you're supposed to handle these people: beat the fuck out of them, crack skulls." And then also apparently multiple times he just said, how come, just shoot them? How come we can't just shoot them, right? Apparently several times. You know, it was. I think it was just like he. I think the actual quote was "just shoot them," and then what it was is that like Bill Barr would like push back and be like, "We can't just shoot them," right? Like that. You know, that also sounds extremely believable to me. It sounds extremely believable. I mean, you got to remember Trump is the guy that said that we should nuke a hurricane, right? He's the guy that said that you should shine a fucking ultraviolet bat flashlight up your butt in order to get rid of COVID. That you should, inject fucking fishbowl cleaner into yourself, right? So yeah, the guy's an idiot, and it seems exactly kind of like somebody from his generation would say. You know what I mean? Like 100%. So I believe that completely. And it really kind of hammers down the point that, the awful, disgusting, like, piece of, like, garbage version of Donald Trump that we got, like, in the news is actually the sanitized version, you know? Like, that's just the stuff that leaked out. And, like, the real person beneath is like 20 times worse than you can like possibly imagine, you know? Like seriously, like it really does sound like, if he actually was able to do half of the shit that he wanted to, then the country would be 20 times more worse off than it actually is now. Like, and this is the thing, it's like the shit that we got, the policies that we got from him were essentially like they were like measured and tempered, I guess, by his staff. So, and they were bad enough as it was. So we get like, for example, Trump's Muslim ban or something like that. That was bad enough. Who knows what he actually fucking wanted? Another thing, apparently Donald Trump actually wanted to put fucking crocodiles along the he wanted to put a moat with crocodiles along the southern border. I didn't believe that shit at first. When I first heard that, I thought that was bullshit. But apparently that's true. So, kind of just makes you wonder, like, wow, if he actually did have free reign to put in all the stuff that he wanted, how fucked up in real life would it really be? Like, I don't know. I think basically we're going to be getting stuff like this, these sort of insider things about Trump for, years. Years and years and years. We're going to be, like, getting more revelations about goofy shit that he said and things that he wanted to, like, ridiculous racist policies that he actually wanted to do, stuff like that. We're going to be getting that for a long fucking time, so. Anyway... So, yeah, wanted to speak about that for a little bit. Let's see here. What's next on the agenda? Well, we can get into a little bit of the meat. There's a few things. So Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. See, that looks much better. Yeah, he's just like super duper tall. See, his feet go way down here. Guess we should have thought about that before we drew this, but whatever. So Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. And a lot of the conservatives and Republicans have lost their minds over that. So what exactly is Juneteenth? Because, they don't teach us about it in school. Juneteenth, for all of you people that live in other countries and stuff who are not from the United States, after slavery was outlawed, it still took a little while before the practice of slavery was, abolished, right? So, the Emancipation Proclamation, of course, only actually, ended slavery in the secessionist states, in the Confederacy, in the South, right? Which meant that it was essentially worthless, because there was nothing that, they had to win the war first before they could stop it, right? And then after the war was over, a couple of the states didn't want to give up slavery, right? And it took a little while for, the actual practice of slavery to end. And Juneteenth is basically the date that the final slaves were finally liberated. Because what happened was that in Texas didn't, there were basically what was going on is that some slave owners, right, when slavery would be ended in their state, they would just move, or they would move before that happened, right? And they kept going west, blah blah blah, so trying to escape, like, escape the army, because this is Reconstruction at that time, so the South was occupied by the federal troops, Union troops, right? And so there was still holdouts, in various remote places in Texas and stuff. You remember Texas is gigantic. Texas is like, it takes like 3 days to drive through Texas. It's massive, right? So lots of places where, lots of isolated places and stuff like that. And basically the army had to go down there, because these people wouldn't give up their slaves. They wouldn't free their slaves, right? And the army had to go down there and force them to. And it was on June 19th, 2 years later, after the after the end of the war, that the practice of slavery was finally ended in the United States. So keep in mind, for 2 years before this, it was already illegal, right? So this was just making the state of Texas and the slave owners that lived there obey the law, right? So that's what Juneteenth is all about. And the thing is that in schools, you don't learn about that in the United States. I mean, I don't know, maybe they do now, but when I was a kid, and I was in high school in the 90s and shit, nobody taught us about fucking Juneteenth, right? In fact, if I remember right, that entire era of history was essentially just glossed over. There really wasn't a lot of, I mean, there was some Civil War. You learned about, Fort Sumter, right? You learned about fucking General Sherman's March to the Sea, and then, General Robert E. Lee breaking his sword or whatnot. You learned about that stuff, and then that was it. I don't even really remember learning about Reconstruction, really, in history class. There might have been, like, maybe 2 or 3 pages, on Reconstruction in general. I mean, I don't know, maybe they've changed the curriculum and actually made it more accurate, since then. I mean, this was fucking 30 years ago that I was in high school. Right? Jesus Christ, was it 30? Almost 30 years. Maybe about 26 years ago is when I graduated high school. So maybe they changed it since then, but at that time, no. At that time, they didn't teach you any of this stuff. They didn't teach anything about, the resistance to, freeing the slaves and ending slavery, and all that stuff. The rise of the Ku Klux Klan, and, we did an entire stream on that, about, basically that entire thing, about the Klan and all of that, Jim Crow, etc., etc. All of that stuff was just resistance to, and keeping a way to keep black people subjugated, to ensure white supremacy, right? So that's what Juneteenth is about. Juneteenth is about, these people are, finally were free, because it's not, and one thing that you're seeing from conservatives and stuff a lot in their reaction to it is that, if they're saying that it's like you're trying to replace the 4th of July, right? Which is bullshit. It's like it's not replacing the 4th of July. The 4th of July is still a federal holiday, and it still has meaning even for people who are not white in this country, because, the 4th of July is history. It's when the country won its independence, and it's like, I don't see why you have to be white or black in order to love the 4th of July, you know. The thing is that it just doesn't have the same kind of impact, you know, especially if you are a descendant of slaves, right? The 4th of July maybe might not mean that very much to you because, oh, it's a holiday about freedom and, you know, how we won, our nation won its freedom from the British, but your ancestors weren't free. Right, so why, you know, so yeah, maybe you'd still celebrate it because, you know, you have a barbecue, whatever, but it doesn't have the same meaning for, I mean, I can understand how someone who's, you know, black, who's the descendant of slaves, right, in this country, would not really care that much about the 4th of July. I can understand why they might think it's kind of a bullshit holiday, you know. The same way that, say, a Native American person might not really want to celebrate Columbus Day so much. Same kind of thing, you know. This is actually kind of what critical race theory is all about. We can segue into that into a moment. But I wanted to kind of show a couple of tweets here. Because I think this is telling, because here's the thing, right? There should be nothing political about June 19th, you know, or, you know, Juneteenth, right? There should be really nothing political about it, you know, because it's history. It's like, are you denying that this happened, right? No, right? You can't deny that this is actually the actual truth that actually happened, you know. So why are so many people on the right losing their fucking minds over it? I don't understand that. So I wanted to show a couple of tweets here. Let me see. That's critical race theory. Here's one from Charlie Kirk. So you know who Charlie Kirk is? He's the. Can you actually see that? Okay. I always got to make sure you can see this because I always keep screwing this up, and whenever I want to show things on the screen and they don't appear. So, Charlie Kirk, of course, is the leader of, you know, what the fuck are they called? Something or other USA. Right. Toilet Paper USA or whatever. He's the leader. His group goes around to college kids and basically Turning Point USA, that's what they're called. His group goes around to like high schools and college kids and tries to indoctrinate them into being Republicans and fuck up their lives. That's basically Charlie Kirk. Here's his tweet. The left doesn't deserve the benefit of good intentions or goodwill anymore. This is on, of course, June 17th. The left doesn't deserve the benefit of good intentions or goodwill agreement anymore. Not on the issue of Juneteenth, not on public health, not on the vaccine, not on masks or lockdowns, not on education, not on infrastructure, not on voting, on nothing. The reason why I wanted to bring this up here is because, first off, it's mask off. And he's basically saying, here, what is this tweet? You know, this tweet says to me, ignore everything that the Democrats and liberals are trying to do. Resist all of it automatically, no matter what it is. You know, simply because of the fact of they are the left. That's what it says to me. So, because we can go over these one by one, right? You know, not on the issue of Juneteenth. Why is Juneteenth an actual issue to conservatives, right? You know, why does it cause so much division? It's because it's a holiday for celebrating the African American experience. That's why, right? And basically over the last year, you know, black people, African Americans in this country have become the new villain for the far right. They're the villain now, right? You know, it used to be like illegal aliens, you know, illegal immigrants back in the 90s. Those were the boogeymen for the far right. They blamed all their problems back in the 90s. They blamed all their problems on illegal aliens, all the crime, all of the you know, our taxes are so high because we're supporting illegal immigrants, blah blah blah. They're stealing your jobs, shit like that, right? After 9/11, it became Islamic terrorism. All of the problems in the country were because of Islamic terrorism. They're coming over. They want to kill you. They're blowing up buildings. Blah blah blah. Every time a plane would crash, a conspiracy theory would go around saying Al Qaeda is shooting down our planes. You know, there'd be no fucking proof for any of this stuff, right? And then Bush goes out, starts 2 gigantic wars, sucks up all this fucking money. And then they say, see, we're spending all our tax money on these wars because of Islamic terrorism, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, they used them as an excuse, you know, to not do anything, to not fix any problems, right? And an excuse to basically, you know, not engage with the Democrats or their agenda, right? After that, it went back to illegal aliens again. It kind of illegal immigrants. You know, it kind of went back and forth a little bit for a couple of years there, and now it's become black people, African Americans, BLM. They're the villain now. You know, they're the ones that are and the more that they become demonized, the more the mask comes off. You know, it's not a coincidence, right? It really isn't a coincidence that in the last 10 years we've had the rise of the alt-right in this country, and, you know, this sort of pushback, and as the alt-right kind of, people from the alt-right gain more influence, it's becoming more and more mainstream. You know, it really is. Think about it. Think about maybe, you know, right before Barack Obama became president, right? Think about that, you know, 2007, right? Excuse me. There really wasn't an alt-right in this country in 2007. Not really. That hadn't really taken off yet. You know, back then, white supremacists and stuff like that were essentially chased away from the internet. You know, everywhere you would go, people would just kick them out, you know, because you didn't have social media to the same extent that you do now. You know, you had things like MySpace and shit like that, right? But, you know, there'd be a forum or a bulletin board or something like that, and, you know, a bunch of Nazis would show up and they get banned. And so they were kind of confined in their own little corners, you know. Suddenly, we have a black president, and the alt-right really explodes after that. That's when they started taking off, you know. And it was actually, it kind of grew out of Ron Paul's supporters. You know, I'm researching all this shit for a stream, so I don't want to, you know, I don't want to give away the goose too early, but that's essentially where the alt-right came from. They, you know, at least online, you know, it really came from like a group of, you know, basically Ron Paul supporters kind of morphed into the alt-right, you know, libertarians and shit like that. Anyway, and it kind of took off. And so think about it. It's been about, you know, that's about 12 years, right? About 10 to 12 years since then. And over the last decade, you know, over the Obama and the Trump presidencies, it's really kind of become more and more mainstream, right? And now we have politicians and pundits and people like Charlie Kirk and like fucking, you know, the Liberty Hangout poop girl, whatever the fuck her name is, you know, and, you know, what's his fucking name? You know, Hannity, right? Sean Hannity and that other douchebag that's on Fox whose name escapes me at this moment. The other, you know, whatever the fuck is it, Tucker Carlson, that asshole. You know, they're basically sliding more and more, you know, to the far, far right, dropping more and more, you know, goose-stepping fucking dog whistles to these people because that's their audience and they know it now. Because you know, How long does it take for a fringe movement to become mainstream? Like, that's what we're seeing. We're basically seeing the alt-right become mainstream in this country, you know. So we're seeing shit like this. So look at Charlie Kirk, you know. I mean, this is like all of this shit that he's saying here is basically, these are all dog whistles to the far, far, far right, you know. Juneteenth is an alt-right dog whistle. Okay. These public health, vaccine, blah, 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 these guys are all anti-fucking vaxxers now. All of them. That was another thing that I noticed when I was researching this for the stream last night. You know, Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, right? Fucking, they're all like anti-mask people, anti-vaccine people, you know. It's fucking disturbing as fuck, you know. And then just think about the other things here that he's talking about. Not on public health, not on the vaccine. What is the conservative answer to public health? You know, what's their system? What's their proposal? Because they don't really have one. There is no proposal. There is no Republican healthcare bill, right? The actual conservative healthcare system that they want is what we have right now. That's the the ACA, right? The government gives subsidies to people to go buy, private healthcare. That's the Republican answer to a universal healthcare system. That's what we've got. We have their fucking version of that. So like what the fuck is there to agree on? Right? They don't want to change anything. They even want to get rid of that because it's the legacy of a black president, right? Don't forget that either. The Republican-controlled Congress tried to fucking repeal, the ACA last year during the middle of the pandemic. As hundreds of thousands of people were sick and dying, they wanted to get rid of what little, healthcare reform we actually fucking have. Can you imagine that? One of the things in the ACA is that they're not allowed to deny you healthcare. Because they used to be able to, which is mind-blowing. I know it's only been 5 years since the shit got enabled, right? But, please remember back, right, to 2014, 2015, when if you had a previous condition, you can get denied healthcare. Your healthcare insurance could just be like, nah, we're not going to pay for that because you had acne once when you were 12 or some shit like that. Or you had asthma years ago or something, right? So we're not going to pay for your brain cancer. Seriously. But that's what it was like in this country before the ACA. And even the smallest little fucking thing, that smallest common sense fucking regulation that, hey, if you pay these people, they're not allowed to fucking deny you service, right? Even that they want to get rid of. So what's their fucking problem? What's their solution for healthcare? They don't have one, On the vaccine, right? That's okay. Not on the vaccine. Well, what is there to agree about the vaccine? What, that people should fucking take it, right? There's a thing that we're gonna talk about later, and one of the bills that came from Tennessee, right, that bans fucking critical race theory in Tennessee. A writer on that bill is that it also bans the vaccination requirement for kids to go back to school, right? That's been something that has been in place for decades in every state around the entire country. You're not allowed to send your kid to school without vaccines unless your kid is like immunocompromised or like allergic to them or some shit like that, right? The reason why that's a requirement everywhere in the country is because it's been proven to work, because you don't want to send your kid to school and have them catch measles, okay? Or have them catch polio or whatever the fuck, or have them catch fucking whooping cough. Have you guys ever seen whooping cough? Look up videos on YouTube of babies with whooping cough. It's fucking incredibly like heart-wrenching to see it. Poor little baby, it'll be like an infant that just can't stop fucking coughing, and it's probably gonna die, right? And it's like incredibly bad. And that's the thing, is that not everybody can take vaccines. So the people that should take them should be required to fucking take them. If they're going to be in a place like a school where they're around all their kids all day, other kids, and everybody knows that kids are little fucking germ factories that spread shit everywhere, right? You know, this is what it's. This is something that's been for like literal decades. They just got rid of that. They got rid of that in Tennessee. So now, you know what? Now you're going to start seeing things like whooping cough and measles and mumps and all of this other shit that we have fucking vaccines for. They're going to start spreading around in fucking Tennessee now. I guarantee it. That's what's going to happen. You know, ridiculous. Not on masks or lockdowns. That's another one. Not on masks or lockdowns, right? Why the hell is this kind? You know, that's just straight up, you know, pandering to the lunatic base. Because the thing is, Charlie Kirk, you know, do you really think that he's an idiot? I don't think he's an idiot. I think he knows masks work. I think he knows lockdowns work, right? Charlie Kirk is a guy that runs a fucking, you know, basically a scam organization that is ripping people off for millions of dollars. So he's obviously not a moron, right? He obviously is smart enough to understand, you know, things, you know, concepts like science. At least, you know, at least he should be, right? So why is he talking about, you know, why is he's advocating don't wear a mask, don't have a lockdown, right? The two things, those are really, I mean, think about that. Wearing a mask, right? Keeping people out of public places. Those are really the only things you can do if you don't have a vaccine to stop a pandemic, right? How do you stop a pandemic if you don't have a treatment for it, if you don't have a vaccine for it, right? You have to take basic fucking precautions. And it's like they don't even want to take basic fucking precautions now. And they don't want to take the vaccine. So it's like they just, what do they want to do? They want to spread the fucking virus then, right? They want people to catch it. Okay, they want people to die. That's the only logical fucking, you know, effect, right, of not taking a vaccine and not fucking locking down and not wearing a mask. It's ridiculous. You know, we really, and the thing is, it's like, you know, look how many likes this fucking thing has. You know, 1,500, right? 342 retweets. And probably, you know, tens of thousands of people at least read it. You know, so it's like, it's not, you know, it's harmful to people spread disinformation like this. You have to push back against it, you know? I mean, yes, you can't outlaw people from expressing their opinion, you know, at least the government can. Twitter should fucking kick this motherfucker off, right, for spreading shit like this, you know? But what can we do? We can push back against it. There should be 10,000 fucking retweets of this, quote tweetings of this. People telling Charlie Kirk Charlie fucking Kirk that he's a moron. Carly Chirk. Maybe that's what I'll call him from now on, Carly Chirk. You know, seriously, that's what we got to do. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on here. Some more from Charlie Kirk, more tweets about Juneteenth. Let's just kind of read through these here. Okay. Making Juneteenth a federal holiday isn't about emancipation of slaves. If it was, they would make September 22nd, Emancipation Proclamation Day, a federal holiday. This is about replacing July 4th, just like the 619 Project is about replacing 1776. Conservatives must reject this. So that's bullshit, you know. We kind of already spoke a little bit about why that's bullshit. It's because on, you know, the Emancipation Day, September 22nd, the slaves were not actually free. The slaves were actually freed on June 19th, 2 years later. So it's like, celebrate the actual day that they were free, number one. And, you know, the thing is, I think people like him are really losing their minds over this because what Juneteenth actually does is it forces people to face the reality that our history is whitewashed. You know, that's a big thing. And, you know, that's kind of one of the main, like, fronts in the culture war here. Anyway, let's read the next one. Okay. Lincoln knew America's founding was July 4th, 1776. He knew that. was the day our amazing nation made a step from ideal to reality. Juneteenth is an affront to the unity of July 4th. We now have 2 summer holidays, and one of them is based on race. Shame on the GOP for supporting this. So, see, it's right there. It's right with, this idea that that's why they don't like it. Because Juneteenth forces them to, actually confront the reality of American history. And it's in this language here. Look at what he's saying in his language, the day our amazing nation made a step from ideal to reality, Well, the nation really wasn't that amazing for people who weren't white, landowners in 1776, was it? Not if you were poor, not if you were a woman, right? Not if you were not the right skin color. Chances are you were probably somebody's property in 1776, right? But that's the big thing here. That's one of the main reasons why conservatives are going so crazy about Juneteenth, about critical race theory, about taking down Confederate statues and shit like that, because they see it as a war on their bullshit history. It's tearing down this fantasy, right, that has been constructed about the United States. I mean, what do people, the American bullshit story, that's what George Carlin called it. Right? That was, this is the American bullshit story, right? That the idea that our country is just, and it's always been just, and we're on the right side of history, and and we're the good guys. Right? We've always been the good guys, and every war that we've been in has been just, and we always treat our people with dignity, and every man is created equal in the United States, and the streets are paved with gold, and you can come here as a shoeshine boy and work yourself up to the CEO of a company and have a building with your name on it and a fucking private jet and shit. And these are, this is America, where your dreams come true, and all you gotta do is work harder. Work hard and save and be smart and get your kids an education. And in real life, it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. The United States is just like every other country out there. The rich are rich, the poor are poor. If you're born rich, you're probably going to stay rich. If you're born poor, you're probably going to stay poor. And the laws are written in such a way that it supports the rich people and puts down the poor people. And it just so happens that there's a nice big cross-section of those laws which also suppress people who are not the right skin color. And that's exactly what Juneteenth is all about. It's them trying to prevent us from actually learning the real truth about the United States. That there is no, the United States is not exceptional. That's what it is, American exceptionalism. You hear that a lot from the right too, this idea that it's providence, that this country is blessed by God and shit like that. And it's like, it's all bullshit. No, it isn't. It's just another country filled with normal people that have the same mistakes that every other country does, and oppresses its people in the same way that every other country has. And they can't handle that shit because, they're like crying little fucking babies or whatever. Let's see. Here's another one. Evanston, Illinois is hosting a Juneteenth parade and a gay pride parade, but the 4th of July is canceled this year. What's the real agenda here? Yep. So it's not enough that he has to, kind of kowtow and send out some dog whistles to his racist followers about Juneteenth. He also has to call it gay at the same time. Moving on. This is Candace Owens. Juneteenth is so lame. Yeah. What's lame is writing "so" with 8 O's like that. I mean, this is kind of like one of those fellow kids moments, isn't it? Like she's trying to appeal to younger, people. I guess that's how teenagers talk or something, right, Candace? Keep in mind, Candace Owens is I don't know. Let's look at her other ones. Okay, here we go. Candace Owens, Marxism is a theory. Critical race theory is the euphemism for that theory. Right? Socialism is its transitory economic state that Marxist theory teaches will turn a capitalist state into a communist one where everything is owned by the state. Not really. Not really. I mean, critical race theory, you know, may have been influenced by Marxism, but it's not Marxist. Not really. You know, uh, I mean, I don't know. It just seems to me like this seems to be you know, the attack here is, of course, is that she's calling it, you know, you're all a bunch of dirty commies, you know. So it's not just like, you know, anti-American to learn about racism now. Now it's actually like you're a communist if you want to learn how race, you know, how our society is built upon laws which have different effects depending on what your race is, you know. If you want to learn about that kind of thing, you're an actual commie. So that's, you know, you got to remember also, you know, 40 years of Cold War has instilled this idea in the far right that communists are sort of like mythical creatures, you know, like communists are sort of like goblins to the far right, you know, like in The Hobbit. Right? You know, goblins in the Hobbit are like these little creatures that live underground and are extremely like dangerous, but are also incredibly stupid at the same time. And it's like if they would just kind of like organize and get it together, they would take over the earth. And it's only like the stalwart defense of the men and the dwarves and the elves that keep the goblins and the orcs from like overrunning Gondor or some shit. Like that's basically what they think communists are. They believe, you know, the far right really does believe that there's an international conspiracy of like shadowy, you know, powerful shadowy figures that are actually running like universities and corporations and shit like that, that one day want to turn the earth into a worldwide version of, you know, the Soviet Union. They really do believe this shit. And this gets expressed in several different forms, from, you know, New World Order conspiracies, you know, a lot of the times there's anti-Semitism mixed in with it, you know, fucking the Elders of the Protocols of Zion, and that's where you get people like fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene saying shit like, you know, shit that doesn't make sense, like corporate communism, or talking about Jewish space lasers, that kind of fucking thing. So, yeah, it's like she's basically just throwing a big red bone to the far right people that, you know, watch her and try to pretend that they're not racist because they like Candace Owens. That's basically what she's doing there. Let's see. Let's move on here. Do I have any more of these? I think that's it. Do I have any more tweets here that I want to go over? I think I've got one by Ted Cruz. Here's another one by, actually, well, that has to do with critical race theories, so maybe that might be a good way for us to segue into critical race theory. So this is a tweet by Ted Cruz. Critical race theory is a Marxist indoctrination that teaches America is inherently racist. All white people are racist. Color blindness is racist. Our system's judicial military are redeemably racist. Biden is teaching these lies to our servicemen and women. Ugh. So, this tweet says a lot here too. First off, critical race theory does not teach any of these things, right? It doesn't teach that America is inherently racist. That's bullshit. Or that all white people are racist. What it does teach is that laws that are enacted in, you know, have different effects, seemingly, on people of different races. And it seems like, you know, maybe there was an ulterior motive for those laws being enacted in that way. Like an example being the sentencing disparities between people who get caught selling crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. You know, it's the same drug, essentially, you know, basically the exact same thing. Chemical makeup is extremely similar. But if you get caught selling crack, you go to jail for far longer if you get caught selling coke. Why is that? You know, is crack really that much worse? Or is it because, you know, most crack dealers happen to be black and most coke dealers happen to be white? Is that why? You know, I mean, seriously. You know, that's just an example of what critical race theory is used for. It's used to examine the outcomes and possible motivations of laws and how they affect different segments of the society, you know, based on race, right? Because there's also, you know, this same study that overlaps with this is also like, you know, how laws interact with people of different classes as well, you know. For example, fines, you know, a set fine that a rich person can pay and it's no big deal, and a poor person it's like a major fucking problem and they can't pay it. Bail is another example, you know. Rich person gets hit, you know, somebody gets hit with a $100,000 bail for a crime they did. Rich person can pay that no problem, gets out of jail. Poor person, you know, has to put up their fucking house as collateral, or most likely will just not be able to do it. And that's just another way that, you know, the law kind of, the application of the law perpetuates inequality. That's what critical race theory does. It just does it along racial lines, you know. Redlining is another example of something critical race theory examines. You know, redlining is the practice of, you know, basically like it should be illegal, and it, you know, it is illegal, but it wasn't for a long time. And redlining is basically the practice of denying people home loans along racial lines, so that all of the white people end up in one area and all of the black people end up in another area. Right? And it's like, you know, the thing about all this stuff, about these types of institutional discrimination that you see all over the place, is that there already are laws against most of these things. It already is a law. You know, there's a law against redlining. You know, there's a law against you know, discriminating against black people when it comes to law enforcement. You know, there's already laws against that. You're supposed to follow, like, for example, when a cop pulls you over, there's supposed to be procedures that they follow no matter what, you know, for no matter who the person is or what race they are, they're supposed to follow certain procedures. But yet, more black men in particular, black people, but black men in particular, end up getting arrested. More of them end up getting shot by police or beaten by police than white people. And when they get arrested, they end up going to jail for longer for the same crimes. And that's just how it happens. And it's like, why? What causes that? You know, what is there in the institution which is causing this disparity? And that's what critical race theory is all about. It's about learning about that kind of thing, that it exists, that it, you know, how do you, and maybe, you know, can give some insight into how these things can be stopped. You know, it doesn't teach that all white people are racist. That's bullshit. You know, this is basically what all this shit that Ted Cruz is saying here. This is what you're hearing 24/7 now on Fox News, on One American Network, right? On, you know, from conservative pundits like Charlie Kirk, you know, and Candace Owens and fucking Tucker Carlson. They're turning this into another boogeyman. You know, this is, like I said before, you know, black people are the enemy now for the alt-right, for the far right. And this is one of the ways that they're going about it. They're you know, they're basically inventing this bullshit and using it as an excuse to, like, you know, take the mask off. Right? Seriously. And look at it. And Ted Cruz is a fucking politician. So Ted Cruz now is going to take these lies that are being spread and he's going to support laws, you know, at a federal level which affect all of us in the entire country, you know, to, like, do things like ban, you know, critical race theory. Right? Fucking ridiculous. One thing I saw this little cartoon. I thought this was interesting. What we were taught. The GI Bill helped vets to secure loans to buy a house upon returning from World War II. What we would be taught with critical race theory, many banks refuse to approve loans to black vets, resulting in fewer than 100 out of 67,000 mortgages going to non-white borrowers in some suburbs. That's redlining right there for you folks. Right. That's, kind of what critical race theory is all about. Trying to identify and learn about these disparities in our, in our society. And that's why people like Ted Cruz and Candace Owens and fucking Carly fucking Chirk or whatever the fuck his name is. That's why they're pushing so hard back against it. Because it shatters their fucking illusion and prevents them from being fucking racist. Anyway. Oh, goddamn. Alright, what time is it? 12:19. Moving on. There was one thing that I did want to show here. And let me just open this up and cue everything up. Right. This was a, oh crap, there's an ad. Let me turn that off. This is a clip that was in the news a lot for the last couple of days, right? This is General Mark Milley, who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, right? And he is responding to a question from Matt Gaetz. Okay. So let me kind of set this up a little bit before we jump right into it. Matt Gaetz, of course, as you know, is currently under investigation for, lots of bad things, though not the least of which is having sex with a minor. Right. Since that happened, Matt Gaetz has gone full hardcore right. Extremely hardcore right in the last, 2 months, right? So, if you think back to last year, Matt Gaetz was always a douchebag. He was always a piece of shit. Okay. But he was a little more sort of libertarian in his bullshittery, right? Before this scandal hit him. He actually, for example, supports legalized marijuana, stuff like that. Of course, the reason why he supports it is because one of his buddies owns a dispensary. But, that's besides the point. But he wasn't like an insane Second Amendment guy, before this, right? And, or anything like that. And since then, since in the last 2 months, since all of this news broke about how he's like a scumbag and like is getting it on with 17-year-olds and stuff, he's just gone incredibly far right. And he's basically what Matt Gaetz is doing is he's trying to ingratiate himself with the worst of the worst of Trump's base, right? And the reason why he's doing that, the reason why he's trying to do that is because those are the most fanatical. Those are the people that will support you no matter what. And he thinks if he can convince them that he's the next Donald Trump, that when he gets arrested, right, and possibly most likely gets off, he's most likely going to get off. That's bad news, but still, he's still probably going to get indicted and is probably going to get, have to stand trial, and all of this bad shit is going to come out about him. He's ingratiating himself in with these people because he knows that after it's all over with, these people will still vote for him. That's why. He's trying to get in with Trump's base because he knows Trump's base doesn't give a shit about anything and will support someone because it pisses off the libs. And they're the people who will think that it's all fake news. He sex trafficked a minor. It's fake news. Oh, he's guilty of fucking soliciting prostitutes and giving them fake IDs and shit like that. Oh yeah, that's all fake news. That's what he's banking on. So he went extremely far. So now he's this insane Second Amendment dude. He's fucking an anti-vaxxer now, right? He's You know, calling for like the fucking, he's like spreading conspiracy theories about how the FBI caused the January 6th Capitol riot. You know, Matt Gaetz has just gone completely far off the fucking deep end, and it's all calculated. It's all calculated. You got to remember, he's doing this as a way to try to keep political power, right? And one of these ways that he's trying to ingratiate himself is now he's full on on the fucking anti-critical race theory train, right? So here is Matt Gaetz questioning, you know, General Mark Miley here. And I'm just going to fast forward this because we don't need to, I don't want to see Matt Gaetz talk because fuck Matt Gaetz, but we're just going to fast forward to where the general actually makes his response. So right about here is where General Mark, is his name Mark Miley? I think it's yeah, Mark Miley. This is where he gives his response. So let's start it here.
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, etc., I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university.
I should make this smaller.
And it is important that
suddenly occurred to me that this should actually be smaller because I don't want CNN to cut my stream here. So why don't we just move this down into the corner, and then that way they can't try to claim copyright on me or some shit, right? That sounds about right. Okay. Anyway, let's start that over. Sorry, folks. I probably should have done that before we started. There we go. Let's start that again.
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, etc., I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look it, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets. But I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military. And I thank you.
Anyway, I thought that was kind of an epic ass chewing there. And there's a couple of things I want to point out. Number one, first off, you'll notice when he basically was talking, you know, Matt Gaetz is here fucking shaking his head right at this point, you know, shaking his head like he's like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, 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 blah. That's kind of a sign there that, yeah, he basically knows how much of an idiot he looks. And then he noticed the cameras were on him, so he started to act out, you know? Like, he saw this guy, he's sitting here like he's got this sort of deer in the headlights kind of look, like, fuck, this dude is like busting my balls. And then he sees the cameras are on him, and then he starts like oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, starts shaking his head and shit like that. Right. See, you can see from the reactions of other people around him, like, for example, this person in the back there, they're like, yeah, okay, Matt Gaetz is getting his fucking ass chewed out. So that's the first thing. Secondly, let's move this out of here. Secondly, there was a couple of little things that guy said, Mark Miley there, that I thought were very important. One of them, you'll notice where he said, I'm well read. I've read Mao, I've read, Marx. It doesn't make me a communist, right? That kind of is a nice little middle finger, I think, to just the conservative predilection to like be, anti-intellectual in the first place, Because what are we really talking about here? We're talking about preventing people from learning something. That's what it is. Because what's going on right now is that, it's not just like, Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, tweeting and fucking Matt Gaetz, like, trying to save his political career, right? It's not just that. There's actual bills going through, multiple states banning critical race theory, banning even the teaching of critical race theory right now. And you'll notice that they're all red states as well, and which is like, kind of goes to show, it's that same group of states. We still, like I said 2 weeks ago, man, we live in two Americas, right? These bills are in, these are the states that have bills that have either passed or that have been introduced in their state legislatures. Okay, Arizona, Georgia, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Missouri, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and West Virginia. With a couple of little exceptions there. Those are all in the Deep South, and they're basically the old Confederacy. It matches again. Matches again with all the same states that are trying to ban abortion, right? Matches with all the same states where there's voter suppression, right? Where legalized marijuana is like a bad thing. Where fucking they're trying to, stop trans women from competing in sports. It's like I said, folks, we live in two Americas. Just more proof of it. There's an actual real free America where you're able to, determine your own destiny and imbibe whatever substances you want and do what you want to do with your body. And now, another one where you're not allowed to do those things, where the state gets to tell you if you're allowed to be gay or not, if you're allowed to be a trans person or not, if you're allowed to, do what you want to do with your body there. And now the state is telling you what you can and you can't learn. And it's like, for all the things, the conservatives and shit, they always talk about freedom and personal responsibility. But when it comes to actual policies, all of their policies do the exact opposite of that. It's like, we hate big government. You should be free to do what you want, and, and you should be able to make your own choices and all that shit. Except when it comes to all these things that we don't like, then we're going to force our will on you, whether you fucking like it or not. Same fucking story. Anyway, so there was one that just passed in Tennessee, which is probably the most notorious of these laws at this point. The law in Tennessee bans educators from discussing racism. So it's like, it's not just that it bans the teaching of critical race theory, right? If you're a teacher now in Tennessee, you cannot even talk about racism. You can't learn about it, right? You can't discuss racism, sexism, or other social issues with students. This is the same law that also repealed the immunizations requirement, by the way. Let's see. And there are 14 different principles that this law bans that you're not allowed to discuss at all in your classroom, right? So I went and I looked all these up, And these are the 14 principles that the Tennessee law says that you're not allowed to, discuss, right? You're not allowed to teach or discuss these at all in a classroom. Now, one sex is inherently superior to another. One race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. That's the first one. So, can't even learn about the concept of white supremacism or why it's bad. See, that's the thing. It's like, okay, because that sounds good. It's like, oh, okay, we don't want their kids being taught that one race is better than another, is what that sounds like, right? But in real life, what that would do is mean that it says that you're not allowed to discuss these things. So it doesn't say that you're not allowed to teach these as facts. It says you're not allowed to discuss them. So you can't even have a discussion about white supremacy, right? So if you wanted to talk about, say, Reconstruction and Jim Crow and the Ku Klux Klan and lynching, if you wanted to talk about these things and the reasons why these things happened, you're not allowed to, according to this new law. Cannot talk about one race being superior to the other. So I guess you could talk that these things happened, but you wouldn't be able to talk about the motives, the white supremacist motives behind them, right? Which kind of takes the fucking, takes the thunder out of it, because this is like the truth. This is why this shit happened. So another thing, according to this, you wouldn't be able to talk about, the motive of slavery, the motive of white supremacy and slavery in the Civil War. You wouldn't be able to discuss that. Pretty sure they would allow you to discuss the states' rights angle, the bullshit states' rights pseudo-history angle when it came to the Civil War. What else? Number 2. An individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, is inherently privileged, racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or subconsciously. So, no discussion of white privilege, no discussion of privilege at all, right? White privilege is an actual thing, right? And also, according to the language of that, you couldn't talk about how systematic oppression of non-whites. You couldn't talk about either of those things, right? So it's just, outlawing the discussion of that completely. That's the problem, right? And the thing is, the way it's worded, it makes it sound like, they're banning the teaching that an individual is superior to another because of his race or his sex. But you'll notice it says, is inherently privileged, racist, sexist, or oppressive, right? So you can't, so that's not what it's saying. It's saying that, you can't even make the case that, hey, being a black person in this country, being a non-white person in this country means that you have certain challenges that that white people don't, right? Or if you're a white person, you have certain advantages, Can't even discuss that as a possibility. A student wouldn't be able to write a paper on that. Teacher wouldn't be able to, show a video on it or teach a module based on it. They wouldn't be able to have a discussion on it. Like if somebody does a current event. You remember current events, when you were in school, you had to read the newspaper and shit. I guess they do it on the internet now. And you had to read a news story or something and write up a summary on it and what it all means and stuff like that. And now if you say somebody does a current event as an assignment, and they're talking about police brutality or something like that, not allowed to do that anymore. Right? So, moving on. Number 3, individuals should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment because of the individual's race or sex, right? Yeah, but that also prevents you from, talking about instances in the past where that happened, right? Every one of these has a double meaning to it, a way in which it's it sounds like, okay, yeah, kids should not be learning this shit in school. But every single one of them is worded in such a way that it basically prevents people from learning about this shit, right? Let's see. Number 5, an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. That's pure bullshit. that's just basically red meat thrown to the right wing base, you know, because basically what are they saying? It's like, oh, you, what do they always say? You're blaming me for slavery. No, no one is ever blaming anybody for anything that they didn't do. That's just that's just bullshit that the right wing likes to say. They like to say that, you know, well, I never owned slaves. I'm not responsible for their slaveries and I'm not benefiting from their slavery. Well, yeah, no one is saying that you own slaves. Nobody is saying that you benefit from slavery, but people are saying that you are benefiting from the way that the society which the slaves created, because that's true, right? It's true that if you're a white person in this country, there are there are things that you don't have to worry about as much if you're a black person. You know, you don't have to worry about, for example, not getting a job because of the way your name sounds. You know, I mean, there may be other reasons why you don't get the job. Maybe you're not qualified enough, something like that. But, you know, that's actually a thing that happens. You know, if you're more likely to not get a call back if your name sounds black, you know, if it sounds like something, you know, like in versus white people's names. And there's an actual study on that. You know, it's like you're basically you have a 50-50 chance of just being refused if you sound like your applicant is a black person. That's actually true. You know, that's an example of white privilege right there, right? White privilege is not, see, that's the thing that people, you know, the right wing in this country, they don't understand about white privilege. They think that it's like the word, because it has the word privilege in it, they think that it's like you know, you're getting something special, you know, like oh, you show up to a restaurant, oh, right this way, sir, I see that you're white, here you get like the prime seating, you know, that's what they think. And that's a misunderstanding of what white privilege actually is. White privilege means that, you know, people who are not white have disadvantages that you don't have, you know, things like that, like disparages in hiring, you know, the way you're treated by cops, stuff, you know, all kinds of shit. The fact that, you know, you're more likely to get a home loan, right? More likely to get a business loan if you, even if you have the same credit as a black person that shows up. If you have the same credit, the same work history, same amount of money in the bank, whatever, if you're white, you're more likely to get that loan. That's just how it works. That's fucking, you know, that's an example of white privilege. That as a white person, you don't have to worry about that, you know. So anyway, moving on here. Let's see. Number 6. Individuals should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or another form of psychological distress solely because of the individual's race or sex. That's basically just a rewording of number 5. It's essentially the exact same shit. You know, no one is ever saying that you should feel guilty because you're white. You know, anything like that. That's just horse shit they like to throw out there. You know, it's a way of pushing back and you know, making it, trying to shift blame and muddy what the actual discussion is really about. You know, it's not about, like, making white people feel guilty, you know. It's about acknowledging the realities of our nation and trying to make it better and more free for everybody, you know. And that's the thing, is that, you know, certain people on the far right-wingers in this country are so invested in the American bullshit story. They're so invested in this mythology that they've created about the United States that they see any kind of acknowledgement of the realities of our nation. They see that acknowledgement as an attack. It's like, oh, you're anti-American. You know, you're part of the America you hate, you know. You're part of the far left, you hate America. It's like, no, I don't fucking hate America, right? I want America to be better. And the way you make it better is by acknowledging the fucking truth, you know, acknowledging the truth that America is not, you know, God's personal fucking, like, creation and gift to the universe. Right? It's like, seriously, that's, maybe we should do a stream on that. Maybe we should do a stream on American exceptionalism, you know, and all that shit, because that would really, I don't know, I think that would take a long time to prepare for. I might have to dig up a lot of stuff. Moving on. Let's see. Number 8. Oh, number 7, I think, is where we were, right? No, we already... Did we do number 7? Yeah, okay. Here we go. No, all right. Yeah, we were at 6. Okay, number 7. Meritocracy is inherently racist or sexist, or designed by a particular race or sex to oppress members of another race or sex. That is also bullshit as well. You know, what this basically is saying is it's an anti it's a pushback against things like affirmative action programs. You know, so you're not allowed to teach that. You know, for example, they say like a meritocracy is inherently racist, right? You're not allowed to teach or discuss the idea that basically there are certain policies in the nation, in this country, which benefit people of certain races when it comes to things like college admissions, right? You know, that's another one too. They'll always say stuff like, well, you know, like for example, there are, what's a good example? So a good example of this would be cultural bias in testing, in standardized testing. That's a good example of this, of what this one is talking about. And it's kind of true. You know, you do have, there are to certain extents things like biases in testing, right? And what this is trying to say is that, well, you know, you're not allowed to even discuss that such disparities may be because of institutional racism, right? That's what it is. That's what it's basically saying. So if you have an institution which is a meritocracy, then you're not allowed to try to discuss how and why it could possibly be set up in such a way to be, you know, to favor one group of people over another, which it does. So no discussions of things like, you know, no discussions of things like race and class, right? When it comes to, like, say, for example, college admissions, when it comes to, you know, advancement in careers, right? Black people are less likely to get promoted. That's another one, right? That's another example of how the, you know, just another real life example of how our country is, you know, white privileged and biased against people of color, right? No discussions of that kind of thing because obviously everything is, you know, it's all a meritocracy. It's like, obviously, you know, college admissions and getting promoted at corporations and inside institutions and stuff like that, obviously that's all based on merit, and none of it's based on, you know, there's no room for discrimination in there at all, or bigotry. And now, according to this law, even trying to talk about that is now illegal. So, number 8. The state or the United States is fundamentally or irredeemably racist or sexist. There are people that do approach, you know, I guess you could say, yeah, there are, I have heard discussions before of people using critical race theory that come to that conclusion. And it's because there are lots of, you know, if you really think about it, there are a lot of laws and there are a lot of examples of how that's actually played out. You know, for example, I see here, like in the chat, you guys are talking about slavery, the 3/5 compromise, for example. That's a perfect example of how the United States at its founding was not equal for all people, right? That's something, you know, the 3/5 compromise was there at the beginning, right? When the Constitution was ratified, that was there, you know. So when this country started, black people in this country were not considered fully human. They were not considered a full citizen. You know, they were 3/5 of a person, right? Just discussing that. So that's the thing. Critical race theory discusses stuff like that. And what are the long-term effects of that? You know, of the 3/5 compromise, for example, the idea that black people had to struggle for, you know, 200 years, and it wasn't until decades later that they were even considered a full person in the eyes of the United States Constitution. Like, you know, what are the effects of that, and how does it affect modern life? You know, that's critical race theory. Not allowed to talk about that anymore, according to this law. It's like, nope, right? You're not allowed to talk about that because you are saying the United States was inherently racist, when it's like the United States and its founding document was inherently racist. There you go. Perfect example. I know this has taken half an hour. Let's kind of go through the rest of them because we're only at number 9 here. Number 9, promoting or advancing the violent overthrow of the United States government. Yeah, okay. Nobody's going to, you know, object to that one. Obviously, you can't teach that in school. I hope that they tell that to Charlie Kirk and Ted Cruz and all the other people who are like trying to rewrite history when it comes to January 6th. All I gotta say is that it wasn't a bunch of college professors in the Capitol teaching critical race theory that almost fucking overthrew the election. So, I think this is a case of, like, you know, the pot trying to fucking call the kettle black or whatever. You know, like, how about you guys fucking clean out your own house before you try to, like, tell us? You know, because last time I checked, you were the fucking assholes trying to fucking overthrow the goddamn government. Number 10, promoting division between or resentment of a race, sex, religion, creed, nonviolent political affiliation, social class, or class of people. You notice that one, nonviolent political affiliation? They threw that one in there. Why? So that way they can talk shit about BLM. Because then they could just say, well, BLM is violent. Right. More just horseshit to the base. More fucking red meat to the, you know, Republican, you know, the fucking brain-dead, non-thinking Republican establishment there. Right. Promoting division between or resentment of. So, I think that one is going to get turned around. I think we will probably see some cases in Tennessee of people using this law in order to actually stop the teaching of white supremacy. You know, I think they didn't think that one through very well, but time will tell on that. 11. Ascribing character traits, values, moral or ethical codes, privileges, or beliefs to a race or sex, or to an individual because of the individual's race or sex. That's another one. So what they're trying to say here is, like, basically this is a pushback against the idea that, you know, all white people are racist, right? That's the pushback there. They're basically trying to say, which is, you know, the thing is, no one ever fucking teaches any of this shit. That's the other thing, is that this is a made up problem. This is like, none of this shit is actually being taught in schools. That's bullshit, you know. But this is like, basically the idea, this is pushing back against, you know, the discussions of things like white privilege, you know, right? Ethical codes, privileges, or beliefs. So you're not even allowed to talk about that kind of thing now, you know. And that's the shitty thing. That's what makes this more insidious. It's not that the school is not allowed to teach this, right? Because that would be fine. It's like, okay, you're not allowed to officially teach this in class. You're not allowed to discuss these things. You can't even have a discussion about it at all. So it's basically just like hamstringing, you know. And the thing about it is, like, this is not shit that you learn in grade school or even high school, you know, or probably even college. Not really, you know. Like, maybe there might be a class that might discuss this for a chapter in a book. You know, if you take a class about law, you know, this is mainly like critical race theory mainly comes up in like law school and stuff like that. Lawyers learn about this kind of thing because they're the ones who are making the laws. You know, they're the ones that have to basically use the law in their daily professions, and they're the ones that become judges and shit like that. So they're the people that should be learning about how laws in this country are inherently unfair, you know, and affect people of one race much differently than they affect people of other races. Those are the people that need to learn these things. But I guess if you're a lawyer and you go to law school in fucking Tennessee, you're not going to be learning any of this. So, okay, those are the 10. And then there's a couple of things where it says these are the things that it does not prohibit. And it doesn't prevent a public charter school from including as any of these. So if you go to a public charter school, if you go to a private school, you can still learn about all this shit. You can learn all the stuff you want. This is only for public schools. And these are the exemptions to these 4 concepts that we just talked about. Okay, so they are allowed to include supplemental instructional materials that talk about, number 1, the history of an ethnic group as described in textbooks and institutional materials adopted in accordance with present law concerning textbooks and instructional materials. So yeah, you can learn about history of an ethnic group as long as that history is approved beforehand. So you could probably learn all about how slaves were brought over from Africa. You just can't learn about why. And you can't learn about the motives behind the war where half of the country tried to keep those people as slaves. Can't learn about that. Number 2, the impartial discussion of controversial aspects of history. Who says it's impartial? You know, so it's impartial as long as you don't tell the truth, right? So you can talk about slavery. You just can't talk about why. You know, you can talk about Japanese internment camps. You just can't talk about why those people were put in Japanese internment camps. So this is going to, you know, you're starting to understand, you know, how this is going to hamstring not just teaching history, but critical thought in general. You know, it's not enough to just learn that something happened. You got to learn why it happened. You know, why was there a Boston Tea Party? You know, a bunch of guys dressed up as Indians and threw a bunch of tea in the bay. The end. It's like, no, why did that happen? You know, is because of, you know, growing resentment between you know, the colonists and England, and it was because the fucking, you know, colonists were being taxed unfairly, right? And no taxation without representation. And hey, doesn't that sound a little familiar to some of the shit that's going on now in this country? You know, billionaires not paying their fucking taxes, you know. Billionaires like paying fucking, you know, Jeff Bezos and shit, paying like $0 in fucking taxes while the rest of us have to pay. Doesn't that sound, you know, and this is how you get critical, you know, this is how you produce students that are able to think critically and examine what's going on around them in the news and make proper informed decisions and ultimately vote. And this is really, ultimately, this is what the right wing doesn't want in this country. They don't want people who are able to make proper informed decisions. Right. They want fucking robots that'll just do whatever they tell them and vote the way they want them to vote the way they tell them. That's what it is. You know, the way you prevent, you know, you prevent an informed citizenry from forming is by, you know, stifling their education. It's the first step in controlling a populace. Seriously, it really is. And it's like, you know, I know it's tired and shit when people call Republicans and conservatives fascists, but, you know, god damn it, if they don't want to be called fascists, then they need to stop acting like fucking fascists. Let's see. So yeah, it's all fucked up. That's the law in Tennessee now. One other thing I wanted to talk about was, just as an extension of this, Ron DeSantis in Florida passed a thought police law. I don't know if you guys have heard about this. Basically, this is the same kind of thing, banning critical race theory and all that. Right. The difference with this law here that has been passed in Florida is that it would require university faculty and students to take a survey that talks about their political beliefs. Right. And this is a survey so they have to take this survey. They have to detail their political beliefs on this survey. This survey is not anonymous, right? They do not have the ability to opt out of this survey. They have to do it, okay? And it's to determine basically, if the people in that university are a little too left-leaning for Ron DeSantis's liking. And if they find out, if they determine that this university is too left-leaning, they're just going to cut funding, right? That's what it is, So it allows students to record lectures without the professor's consent in order to use them as evidence in civil suits and lawsuits. So, what this whole thing in Florida, what it basically is that it's a pushback, and it's basically more bullshit for the right wing. It's pushback against what they think is Marxist indoctrination in universities, and this has kind of been a thing that they've been saying for another thing for literally my entire life, as long as I remember ever actually being able to read. I've always heard things about how conservatives and Republicans and shit think that universities are radicalizing young people and turning them into commies. That's what this is all about. It's basically saying that, hey, we're gonna take a survey of the professors and a survey of the kids, and if the kids there are if they're a little too soft on socialism, if they lean left, we're gonna cut funding to these universities, and you don't have a choice; you have to take it. That's what it is, right? So I don't want to get too much into this. I'm thinking maybe I'll talk about it next time when I can get more details for it. But there was a really good article in Vox about that. The bills that passed in Florida, and it's kind of disturbing. It's basically a fucking thought police bill. Really fucked up. But why don't we take some time here and read some comments, because we're hitting the 2-hour mark here. So let's read some of your comments here before we call it a day. So first off, let's take a look at where we're at. It's actually looking pretty good, don't you think? I still think we need to fill this space back here. We gotta fill that up. I think this will finally look good once we get all this wall done, and I want to make it look like it's all wet and moldy and shit. So, kind of cool. Anyway, so let's read some comments. Let's see. Danny Cat loves me. We talked about that one, the terrorist thing. Danny Cat, rather than improve police, it's easier to throw a new holiday at them, figuring that'll do it. That's what Martin Luther King Day was for, too. For sure, there is an element of appeasement going on with Juneteenth. It's definitely there. This idea that it's something that they can do which doesn't actually really change anything. Like making Juneteenth a federal holiday doesn't actually change the law. It doesn't really stop things like police brutality or institutional racism or anything like that. But, I do think it's important, though, because it allows learning opportunities, right? Because now, in the states where this shit is not banned, right, when Juneteenth shows up, there'll be a lesson on Juneteenth, right? That was always, especially when, I don't know if that happened in your school, but, especially when I was in grade school, that's what would happen. Every time there's a holiday, You learn about the holiday. You learn about Thanksgiving and the history behind it. You learn about, you know, you learn about President's Day, right? Stuff like that. We learned about Martin Luther King on Martin Luther King's birthday, you know. So this will give an opportunity for them to do a history lesson, which I think is ultimately good. So even though there is some appeasement to it, I think, you know, I think we will see some good things going forward, and at least, you know, this next generation of kids coming up will actually know what Juneteenth was. You know, they won't be like me and my generation had no fucking clue what it was until I was an adult. I didn't really know about it. I didn't even know what it was until a few years ago, actually. You know, about 3 years ago, because they don't teach it in schools. So anyway, moving on. Let's see. Dynacat. I'm predicting the bipartisan infrastructure bill won't go anywhere either. Yeah, it's gonna fail. It's gonna be, you know, they're gonna lie, and the vote will be 50-50 yet again. So I agree with you there. Freddie Silver, CRT drops from Mad Cow's bunghole. Wait, what? I don't know what you're talking about there. Are you talking about Rachel Maddow? No idea. Lewis the Hedgehog. So Charlie Kirk is telling us to ignore reality. Yes, he is. He is. Charlie Kirk is like especially slimy, in my opinion. You know, like, so I really have no respect for any right-wing pundit except for one guy. The one guy I have respect for, his name is PJ O'Rourke. And it's because he's not insane, PJ O'Rourke. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a writer. He's written a couple of books, and they're actually kind of funny. You know, like he has one book called All the Trouble in the World, where he just goes around the world and at that time hits up different hot spots, you know, famines and shit like that, and talks about the causes behind them. And you know, and the guy's a conservative, and but he's not insane. He's not insane, and some of the shit he says is actually kind of has some merit. That's really the only conservative pundit I respect. All the rest of them are, in my opinion, just grifters. You know, Candace Owens is a fucking grifter. She's doing it for the money, right? She was much more left leaning as a kid. You know, when she was in like college and shit. And then there was just a day that she finally just decided to be conservative, and it's because they pay. Being a conservative pays, you know, especially when you're a black person going out and taking the hard line racist stance against black people. There are people, you know, certain muddied interests that are going to be greasing your palm there. And so, yeah, zero respect for Candace Owens. You know, zero respect for Charlie Kirk. Zero respect for, you know, Steven Crowder. That guy's a piece of shit. I don't know if you guys saw the whole thing between Sam Cedar and Steven Crowder the other day. That shit was hilarious, you know. Crowder, like, ran away and stuff. Anyway. Moving on. Let's see. Dynacat. I do think there should have been far more stringent quarantines put in place all across the country early on. Yes. Yes, there should have. But it's predictable. It's predictable that it didn't happen. And, you know, the people now that are resisting are the same segment of the population that thinks Jesus is going to come back. And, like, you know, I don't know, get rid of the fucking assault rifle ban or something. You know what I mean? It doesn't surprise me at all in the slightest that the people that are now anti-vaxxers and that don't want to wear masks and don't want to take basic fucking precautions are the same people who believe in weird supernatural shit, and that the you know, that Satan runs the fucking world, that the election was stolen, that they believe in the NWO. It doesn't surprise me at all. And the scary thing is it's 30% of the population. That's what's holding it back. 30% of the population, roughly half of Republicans, right, believe this shit. Those are the people. Those are the people who are kind of too far gone to reason with. And the best I think we can do at this point is contain these people. You know, it's too late to educate them. It's too late to debate them. They don't want to listen to debates, right? They want violence. And the best thing we can do is contain them and try to prevent them from, you know, basically fucking spreading. They themselves have become sort of a virus to the rest of us in this country. So, let's see. Moving on. Dynacat loves me. Survival of the fittest is the Republican health plan. Yeah, for sure. Dynacat. You can get rich as a scam artist and be a genuine idiot. It's a whole different kind of intellect. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, you know, the way I see these people like these pundits, people like fucking Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and stuff, they're really no different to me than like, you know, TV preachers. They're the kind of the same thing. You know what I mean? They address the same people, just one side is hitting it from religion and the other side is hitting it from politics. But it's the same kind of, you know, grift. And the way I see it is that if you're fucking stupid enough to give these people money, then you kind of deserve to get ripped off, you know? And the danger comes, it's the same thing with the TV preachers. The danger comes when these people try to force the rest of us to adhere to the same horseshit beliefs they believe in, you know? So, like, the same way that, you know, far right-wing Christians will try to get evolution taught in schools, it's like now we're seeing the same shit like far right-wing, like, you know, far right-wing Republicans are trying to get their horseshit fucking, you know, conservative religion taught in schools too. I mean, it really is a religion, this stuff. Right? So, anyway, what else? 4th of July hasn't been canceled, it just hasn't happened yet. Yeah, that's true. And I don't see why, you know, how come we can't have two holidays? I mean, just an extra day off of work to me, you know. An extra day to go watch fireworks and eat at a barbecue, as far as I'm concerned. So, I don't see why anybody would get pissed off at another day off, you know, unless you're like, I don't know, racist. Johnny Cat loves me. That reminds me, is there an illegal fireworks shortage this year? I hardly ever hear any compared to previous years. I think a lot of places are banning fireworks, at least around here, like in the western states and stuff. They're banning it because of all of the massive wildfires that keep happening every year around this time. So I know, for example, that's one of the main reasons why, you know, like in California here, we'll have sort of fireworks shows, you know, like each city will shoot some off or whatever. But yeah, if you get caught with fireworks, it's like you get a ticket for that. And it's I think I remember reading something they were cracking down on that because they're trying to prevent wildfires. So I don't know. I personally agree with that because wildfires are scary as fuck. And I really would not enjoy having to be evacuated from my house again. So hopefully that ban does something to kind of stop some of that. Let's see. Lewis the Hedgehog. Didn't members of the John Birch Society claim that race mixing is communism? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. There was a lot of also in the pushback against the civil rights movement. There was also a lot of anti-communism rhetoric going on there. You know, calling Martin Luther King a communist, that kind of thing. That was very much a big part of that. And that's kind of that kind of comes from the cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. You know, like cultural Marxism is this sort of idea that there was a school, you know, they call it the Frankfurt School, which was a group of professors that believed in a certain version of Marxism. And one of those and they formed a conspiracy theory, you know, a conspiracy basically to subvert all of the institutions in the United States and slowly turn them over to, you know, turn them into, you know, Marxist institutions, and through that sort of institutional power, one day they'd be able to like change the United States into a communist country. So it's of course bullshit. There is no such fucking thing, you know. Cultural Marxism is horseshit. But one of the things that they you know, one of the parts of the cultural Marxism conspiracy theory is the idea that um, you know, civil rights was backed by communists, you know, and that equality and egalitarianism is one of the steps towards, you know, turning the country full communist, you know. So yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah, cultural Marxism is complete horseshit. In fact, that might be a good idea for a stream too, talking all about that and where it came from, and then all of the conspiracy theories that it interacts with. It's complete horseshit, you know. Anyway, let's see. Okay, guys. I think that's pretty much it. We're at the 2 hour mark right now. Oh man, thank you so much for sitting around for 2 hours and listening to me rant and rave like a madman. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. You're great. Let's go ahead and end this thing. So before I end it, of course, I need to give you my ending spiel here. So this is my ending speech. If you like what I do and you want to support me, you can check me out on my social media. This is my DeviantArt page. Actually, let's move this over here. Okay. This is my DeviantArt page where you can see more of my artwork. I put up stuff here every once in a while. Here's a new piece that I just did the other day. You know, so if you want to see more of my artwork and you like it, please check me out on DeviantArt. If you want to support me, you can support me on Patreon. I actually do have a patron. His name is Joseph. Thank you so much, Joseph. You're awesome. And thank you for supporting me. But if you want to support me, I have different levels as low as $1 a month. And you can support me there on Patreon. I would really appreciate that. If you want to support me without doing a recurring thing on Patreon, I have an Etsy shop where you can buy stuff. I sell prints. I sell little, you know, creatures and things like that. I'm going to be putting a whole bunch more on these. I just made a whole bunch of these little creature things. I'm going to be putting like 5 or 6 of these up on the shop here. And, you know, these things are like prints. They're 11 by 17 coffee stain prints. This is a Lovecraft character here for, you know. So, yeah, if you like me and you want to give me money, then you can give me money by buying something on Etsy. And then I also have a webcomic, Wanja.com, fun for the whole stupid family. It's got ninjas, it's got demons and stuff. It's got people's heads getting chopped off, that kind of thing. So, anyway, please check me out there, Wanja.com. And then finally, if you want to see me talk about other things than politics, you know, if you want to see me talk about toys and video games and movies and stuff, check me out on UCD videos. So anyway, I think that's pretty much it for us today. Thank you all so much. Not really sure what to do for the next stream. So if you guys have any suggestions, you know, I was thinking maybe of doing something on like libertarianism, you know, something like that, like the history of the Libertarian Party, where it came from, something, I don't know, but I'm still trying to decide. So if you have any ideas about, you know, what you'd like to have me talk about, you know, feel free to make a suggestion, you know, leave a comment or something like that, and we'll see what happens. So anyway, guys, thank you all so much. Thank you, Lewis the Hedgehog. Thank you, Dynacat. Thank you, Freddie Silver and Adversary Fandon. You guys are the best. I really appreciate it. And I will be seeing you next week. So, adios, you guys.